America is on the fast track to an unprecedented historic collapse. Overtaxation, endless wars, corruption, inflation, rising inequality, the collapse of the petrodollar, failure to invest in jobs for Americans, all of these are in play to produce a death spiral for the end of an empire just like all the empires before, and I don't see a reverse of this great decline unless there's root and branch reform. The lockdown has destroyed the travel, hotel, airline, entertainment, and restaurant sectors. Economic exhaustion from giveaways to the rich and big business. Social exhaustion from neglect of the domestic social and physical infrastructures. Private capital gambled on the markets rather than invested in production. Unneeded capital chasing too little of value. Insufficient consumer spending to stimulate economic expansion. A government foundering on an archaic federal structure riddled with greed, corruption, deceit, and partisan politics. America's economy is in tatters right now, with debt spiraling even further out of control. The ongoing collapse of our economy continues. The future does not look bright economically. Too many people, and automation will ensure even less are needed to produce what is consumed. An economy propped by junk borrowing and hollow spending either needs a massive exodus or another depopulating event, or a massive new works program to increase the value of labor versus capital. So much that could collapse has not yet collapsed, and so little support is coming from the federal government for the unfortunate victims, that I don't see how we aren't heading for a cliff, into economic circumstances far worse than what we've experienced so far unless something changes for the better, and fast. A country financing half of its state expenditures by money printing is at the end of its choices, full stop. 60 million plus are on the government unemployment cheese dole. Millions are falling off the rolls after 26 weeks. This does not count the self-employed, and it does not count the dreaded U6 unemployment number, which is over 90 million. Long-term unemployment spikes for millions of Americans, with no relief in sight. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to click the like button. Many of you have asked me where they can buy silver and gold bullion. You will find in the description box the links where you can buy American Silver Eagle, silver bars, or rounds. I highly recommend that you start stacking some silver bullion for the future. The full impact of the pandemic has yet to be felt. Many businesses have been barely hanging on in hopes of the fictitious V-shaped recovery, which obviously isn't happening. They will be long gone by the time this virus is tamed. The question is, will the powers that hold America recognize the beckoning abyss before it's too late if, in fact, a reversal is even possible? The politicians still cannot seem to be able to hammer out a stimulus deal putting the stocks under pressure. Along that same line, someone should consider the possibility that the stock market is tulips. How much of the market's inflated value is from a new breed of day traders? Folks who have found it easier to play the market now that they work the 9-to-5 from home on their personal computers. Folks who considered their stimulus checks and PPP loans to be play money. The stock market is a bubble. At some point, those chips will be called. Almost every catastrophic economic depression is preceded by a bubble. The stock market will crash eventually. The bubble will burst. The pandemic recession can deepen quickly to become a double-dipped pandemic depression. And yet, imports into the USA are booming, causing bigger trade deficits now than pre-pandemic. The federal government has been living on credit. State and municipal governments are also being forced to look at borrowing simply to maintain essential services. At some point, the piper has to be paid. Recessions come with a credit crunch because the market is sorting out the solvent from the insolvent entities. By giving unlimited stimulus to the market, the central banks have allowed credit to flow to solvent and insolvent entities for decades without interruption. This is akin to the accumulation of dry tinder over a prolonged period. The pandemic is like a lightning strike from the blue. Because there are so many zombie companies, defined as those who do not earn enough to even service their debts. This is the perfect tinder for a raging forest fire. Notice how the Fed started down the path of extraordinary measures 12 years ago. Over time, those measures became routine measures. Once started down the path, the Fed is forced to up the ante on extraordinary measures, and each time the Fed saves the world, it sets it up for a bigger crisis down the path. The federal deficit is a worry, and the federal government can just keep on throwing money at our problems. With government aid to many small businesses, the nation's airlines, and the unemployed either expired or dwindling, the labor market rebound has notably slowed. The number of long-term unemployed has increased, and Americans are increasingly exhausting their regular state jobless benefits and moving onto a federal program for longer-term support. Welfare running out. Time to juice the sheeple with another round of stimulus, welfare money. Since 2008, it's been welfare, stimulus, government borrowing, spending zombie economy. That is only going to grow more acute as they borrow and spend more and hand out more welfare. So how is the Great Recovery going, folks? Now do your civic duty and buy the effing dip and keep the casino up until after Election Day. Oh, and pray for your $1,200 pittance. After all, the banking cabal received $10 trillion to play around with. Thanks for playing. There was never a V with all these data. For there really to be a recovery as opposed to a bounce after reopening, there would have to be an equal and opposite V to the upside followed by a reversion to an upward trend line. No way is that happening in any of the data sets. After the election, this all collapses, followed by the World Economic Forum global reset in 2021. This means that the globalists take total control, and we the people are even more screwed than ever. Trillions in more debt will propel stocks much higher. It is fascinating to watch the Fed prop up the markets, and every time markets try to go down, the Fed steps in with billions and pumps the markets right back up. I believe the Fed has stepped up its buying of treasury bonds too because somebody, maybe China and Japan, who are the largest holders of American treasury bonds, are selling as many per day without disrupting the system and causing a collapse in hopes to get all their invested money out of America before it collapses. And when bond yields rise up due to the sales of bonds, the Fed steps right in with billions and buys them, so yields go back down. Something fishy is going on. America's economic collapse will be here real soon. The stock market can go higher, but that only means the currency is losing a lot of value. Nobody believed the Titanic was really sinking until it was too late. The world is in a global depression, which the central banks have so far managed to paper over by erecting a Potemkin economy. Permanent job loss preceded the pandemic by decades. It happened in the 80s when factories started closing and moving overseas. This is why we have very little hope of a V-shaped recovery once our current disaster abates. There are simply no jobs to go to because we dissolved our industrial base, beginning 40 years ago. We ooh and ah over technology. We swoon over Zoom. We prostrate ourselves before the cloud. We sit in chairs made in China before monitors made in China, attached to CPUs made in China, powered by chips made in China. And we have the temerity to suggest that a consumer economy is something to boast about. We're praying for a return of the restaurant and hotel trade. China isn't waiting on tourists. China has once again set about producing the goods the world needs. Any doubts about where there will be a V-shaped recovery? The super elite are the most stupid people in the world. They set up China as the world factory and put all the eggs in one basket. Instead, if they got the brains, America could have a diverse source of the supply chain from India, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Africa, Mexico, and South America. These supply chain countries will own U.S. Treasury bonds in a well-distributed balanced global finance. By putting all eggs in one basket, which is China, the stupid super elite are just asking to be owned and destroyed by China. The elite predator class transported U.S. factories to China to make billions on wage arbitrage. The money is in the Cayman Islands, and the factories are in China. Western minds cannot understand that Chinese people are completely honest with their own families, but everyone else is to be taken advantage of, lied to, cheated, or whatever it takes to gain an advantage. This is rooted into the last 20 centuries of Chinese culture, and no piece of paper signed by anyone is going to change a scorpion into a butterfly. Complete disconnection from China's economy is the only answer. It's very unwise for a 100-pound person to try to rescue a drowning 300-pound person. They will just take you down with them. Germany retained deep manufacturing capability and arguably has the strongest Western economy. Is there a lesson there for the entire Western world and especially the USA, which has been exporting manufacturing to China in the last 20 years? The Third World as a model for America's future is not as far-fetched as it sounds. The flight of U.S. investment dollars overseas is also a classic feature of underdeveloped countries. In the absence of rigorous foreign exchange controls, wealth is moved to safer and more profitable offshore havens. This, not the supposed laziness of its people, is the main reason countries do not develop. In the era of globalization, all elites, including American ones, are comprador elites. Only draconian government intervention can arrest this decline. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, leave me a comment, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels. I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have already donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.